Welcome to the deep dive.
Great to be here.
So, Europe lately, it's just been hit by a real barrage of extreme weather, hasn't it?
It really has.
We've seen those intense heat waves that just, well, wouldn't quit. Floods sweeping through towns.
And fires, too. Even fires popping up at really strange times of the year.
Exactly. So today we're jumping straight into what's going on.
Yeah, we're focusing mainly on events, say, around April and July 2024.
Right.
But it's, worth remembering this came after a March that already broke records.
So it's not just isolated incidents?
No, definitely not. It's clearly a pattern, and it's hitting different parts of the continent really hard.
Like where, specifically?
Well, southeastern Europe, for instance, they sweltered through a heat wave this July, lasted over 3 weeks.
3 weeks, wow.
Yeah, the longest in modern history for the region. And then, remember, northwest Italy.
Oh, the spring floods.
Yeah.
Terrible.
Devastating. Displaced thousands of people. And then, kind of incredibly, Spain and Greece were dealing with major wildfires way back in April.
April. That feels really early for major fires.
It's completely out of sync. April's usually mild green.
It definitely feels like something's shifted beyond the usual ups and downs.
Mm-hmm.
So the big question for this deep dive, I guess, is why?
Mm-hmm.
What's the underlying cause for this, well, surge in extreme weather across Europe?
And maybe more importantly.
Yeah, what does it mean for, for people listening? What are the takeaways here?
Exactly.
We want to really unpack that why and hopefully get a clearer picture of what the future might hold.
Okay. So let's start by looking at the reality on the ground, maybe.
Good idea. Let's get specific.
Absolutely. So let's take that heat wave in southeastern Europe again, July 2024. It wasn't just like a few hot days.
Right.
It was sustained, intense heat, posed serious risks to public health, infrastructure.
And those floods in Italy you mentioned?
Yeah, northwest Italy. Again, not just a bit of high water. We're talking widespread destruction, communities forced to evacuate. Just devastating.
And the April fires in Spain and Greece.
You said that.
That's unusual.
Highly unusual. That time of year, the landscape is usually still pretty damp, green from winter rains.
So seeing major fires then, it just underscores how out of kilter things feel.
It really does. And when we zoom out, look at the bigger picture, the science is pretty clear on Europe's overall warming trend.
Okay.
We hear this from climate scientists like Dr. Elena Novak at the Berlin Institute for Climate Impact.
And what are they saying?
The key finding is that Europe is warming at twice the global average rate.
Okay, hold on. Twice the global average. That sounds significant.
It is significant.
Why? Why Europe specifically? And what does that actually mean in practical terms? Are there, like, geographic reasons?
That's a crucial question. Several factors contribute. One element is just the land-sea distribution in the northern hemisphere.
Okay.
And Europe's relative proximity to the Arctic, which itself is warming very, very rapidly.
So changes in the Arctic affect Europe's weather patterns.
Profoundly. It can disrupt atmospheric circulation, leading to more extremes. Plus, you have feedback loops. Think about melting snow and ice.
Less white surface means less reflection, more heat absorbed.
Exactly. Lower albedo. That exacerbates warming, particularly in northern latitudes, which then influences weather further south in Europe.
And the consequences of this faster warming.
Well, it means we're likely looking at more frequent and more intense heat waves, a greater probability of extreme rainfall events.
Leading to flash floods, like in Italy.
Precisely. And also a quicker rise in sea levels, which obviously impacts coastal communities sooner than perhaps we expected.
So it's not just warming, it's amplified warming happening faster here. Okay, let's dig into the why a bit more then. Beyond this global trend, what makes Europe itself particularly vulnerable?
Right. There are several layers to Europe's vulnerability. A big one is urbanization.
Okay, how so?
Well, cities, they're full of concrete, asphalt, fewer green spaces. They create these heat islands.
Where it gets much hotter than the surrounding countryside.
Considerably hotter, yeah. Which really intensifies the impact of heat waves on millions of people living in cities.
That makes total sense. All that concrete just soaking up heat. What other vulnerabilities are there?
Another key aspect is, frankly, our infrastructure. A lot of it is quite old.
Built for a different climate.
Exactly. Drainage systems, power grids, transport networks, they were often designed for weather conditions that are, well, no longer the norm.
So they just can't cope.
Increasingly, yes. They struggle to handle the intensity and frequency of these extreme events. We see system failures, widespread disruption during major floods or heat waves.
So the systems we rely on are under strain. You also mentioned Europe's diverse geography earlier. How does that fit in?
Well, Europe isn't just one climate zone, is it?
No.
That variety means it faces a whole spectrum of climate risks. Think about the Alps.
Melting glaciers.
Melting glaciers, changes in snowpack, that affects water availability downstream, increases risks like landslides,
Okay.
and then look south to the Mediterranean.
Droughts, wildfires.
Becoming increasingly arid, yeah, heightening the threat of both. So you've got different regions facing very distinct challenges, but all of them are being amplified by climate change.
A continent of varied landscapes facing this multitude of threats. And as we've touched on, the elephant in the room, the underlying driver,
Yeah.
it's global warming caused by human activity.
Yes.
Could we just state that connection explicitly?
Absolutely. The overwhelming scientific evidence confirms it. The primary cause of the warming we're seeing is the increase in greenhouse gases in the atmosphere from
Okay.
human activities. Burning fossil fuels, coal, oil, gas for energy, transport, industry, deforestation on a large scale, even things like industrial agriculture and overconsumption play a part.
And these gases trap heat.
They trap heat, leading to a rise in global temperatures. And that rise fuels more extreme, more energetic weather events worldwide, including, obviously, the ones hitting Europe so hard.
It's a stark link.
Mm-hmm.
And, to really grasp the human cost of all this,
Mm-hmm.
it's so important to hear from people actually living through it.
Definitely.
Do you have any personal stories that illustrate this reality?
We do. We heard some incredibly moving accounts. There was Marco from the Piemonte region in Italy.
From the floods.
Yes. He talked about the devastation of losing his family's vineyard. It wasn't just, the financial hit, though that was huge.
It's more than money.
It was the loss of a legacy, a way of life passed down generations. Just washed away.
That's absolutely heartbreaking.
Yeah.
A real human tragedy behind the headlines. And you also mentioned someone in Greece dealing with the fires.
Yeah, Sophia in Thessaloniki, she described the atmosphere during those April fires. The smoke.
Oppressive, I imagine.
Totally. She talked about the fear, the anxiety, especially for her kids. The air quality just plummeted, that constant smell of smoke, the hazy skies. She said it felt like the world was ending.
Wow.
These stories, they just remind us, don't they? This isn't abstract data. It's about people's lives, their homes, their sense of safety being fundamentally threatened.
They really do bring it home. It's not some distant future threat. It's happening now to real people. So, okay, given how serious this is, what's actually being done, what are the current efforts in Europe to tackle climate change and adapt?
Well, there are significant initiatives, certainly. At the highest level, you have the European Union's goal.
Carbon neutrality.
Carbon neutrality by 2050. That's the big overarching pledge. It involves a whole suite of policies, regulations, trying to slash emissions across the board.
And a big part of that is shifting energy sources, right?
Yeah.
Renewables.
Absolutely. That's a cornerstone. We're seeing really substantial growth in solar and wind power.
How much growth?
Well, projections for, say, 2025 alone suggest around 70 gigawatts of new solar capacity coming online across the EU. That's a lot.
That does sound like serious momentum.
It's crucial for decarbonizing the energy sector, moving away from fossil fuels.
And what about more locally? Are cities doing things? Communities?
Yes, definitely. Lots of cities are trying innovative approaches. Think of places like Amsterdam or Copenhagen.
What are they doing?
They're leaders in what's called green infrastructure.
So more parks, green roofs.
Exactly. Parks, green roofs, permeable pavements that let rainwater soak in. It helps manage stormwater, reduces that urban hit island effect we talked about, boosts biodiversity. These local actions can really build resilience.
And it's not just about building things differently, is it? I've heard about restoring natural systems, too.
Yes, rewilding, that's becoming increasingly important.
How does that help?
Well, restoring ecosystems like forests, wetlands, rivers, bringing them back to a more natural state. These healthy ecosystems provide vital services. They regulate water cycles, prevent soil erosion, absorb CO2.
So they help both with reducing emissions and adapting to the impacts.
Exactly. It's a win-win.
Okay, so there's this multi-pronged approach. EU policies, renewable energy push, city initiatives, rewilding. But we also hear loud voices, climate activists, saying it's not enough, not fast enough.
That's a very common sentiment.
What's their main concern?
Many activists, while acknowledging the efforts, argue the scale and speed just don't match the urgency of the
The
crisis.
science is moving faster than the policy.
That's their argument. They emphasize the incredibly limited time we have left to make drastic cuts in emissions and build genuinely resilient societies. You hear that phrase often. We don't have decades, we have years.
A real sense of urgency.
Their concern is that our current political economic systems, they're just not built to respond adequately or quickly enough.
That sense of urgency is hard to ignore, isn't it, given everything we've discussed? Which brings us to, I think, a really important point for everyone listening.
Mhm.
What can we do as individuals faced with these huge challenges? What practical steps can you or I actually take?
It's easy to feel overwhelmed, but individual actions do add up. They matter collectively.
Like what?
Well, one crucial thing is engaging democratically. Voting.
Choosing leaders who take this seriously?
Exactly. Voting for leaders, for parties that prioritize climate action, support policies for emission cuts, for sustainability, that sends a really powerful signal.
Okay. And in our everyday lives, what changes can make a difference?
There are many practical things. Thinking about our consumption habits is a big one.
How we eat, how we
Yeah.
travel.
Yeah, maybe reducing meat intake, choosing more sustainable transport, cycling, public transport, walking when possible, making conscious choices about what we buy, reducing waste.
Energy use at home.
Definitely. Opting for energy efficient appliances when you need new ones, just being mindful of energy consumption overall.
Those feel like tangible things people can actually do. What about community involvement?
Supporting local sustainability initiatives can really amplify your impact.
Like what sort of things?
Oh, participating in community gardens, maybe?
Wow.
Supporting local farmers markets? Volunteering with environmental groups in your area? These actions build stronger, more resilient communities right where you live.
And perhaps one of the most fundamental things, just talking about it.
Absolutely critical, having open, honest conversations about climate change with friends, family, colleagues.
Why is that so important?
It raises awareness, it helps tackle misinformation, it builds a sort of collective understanding and hopefully a sense of shared responsibility, shared urgency. Just normalizing these discussions is huge.
Okay. So it sounds like while the scale of the challenge is immense,
Yeah,
we're not actually powerless.
not at all.
Every action, big or small, contributes. But as the activists remind us, the clock is ticking.
Precisely. We have agency, we can make choices, but that window for effective action is, well, it's narrowing.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, it seems crystal clear that the extreme weather we've seen hammering Europe recently, it's not just random bad luck.
No, not at all. It paints a really compelling picture, doesn't it? A continent already grappling right now with the accelerating consequences of a changing climate.
These floods, these fires, these heat waves,
Yeah.
they're not just freak weather.
They're tangible signs, symptoms of larger systemic climate shifts that are already having profound real-world impacts.
And the key takeaway really has to be that undeniable link between these events and, well, human-caused global warming.
Yes, it's a connection science confirms, and it demands our attention, our action.
Indeed. And we really hope you, listening, take this information, reflect on it.
Maybe share it, start those conversations we talked about, understanding how interconnected all this is. That's really the first crucial step towards making any meaningful change.
Absolutely. And maybe on that note, let's leave you with a final thought to chew on. Given how interconnected our global climate system is, how might the rapid, significant changes we're already seeing unfold in Europe, how might they foreshadow similar, maybe even more intense challenges in other parts of the world, perhaps even closer to your own home?
Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about as we all try to navigate this evolving climate reality together.